In this particular lecture, we are going to start building the home page. So if you remember, Mr. Green had asked us to build a page on the portal which mainly had two things. One was relevant dynamic images, and second was a button by clicking on which the end users can pay their electricity bill. Now, guys, understand this for once and for all, that whenever we have to display some relevant information or actions on the screen, we have to use a flex card. So now let us try to understand a little bit more about this particular Omnistudio tool. So I will go ahead and search for visiting cards. So I'm pretty much sure you guys must have seen these kind of visiting cards. So these were mainly used by businesses for promotion purpose. Whenever a businessman used to visit their clients, they used to leave these visiting cards with them. So here, as we can see, this visiting card consists of some basic information. So guys, you know what? Flex card is no different than these visiting or business cards. They are just an electronic form of these business cards and display certain relevant information and actions to the end users. So now, since we have understood that what a flex card is, let us go ahead and build this dynamic image functionality for Mr. Green. So I will go to my org and I will navigate to the Lightning experience by clicking on this particular link. So now guys, we have to click on the app launcher and we have to navigate to the Omnistudio app. So in older orgs, this name may be Digital Studio or something like Velocity Digital Studio. So please take care of that. So here you can see that there is a drop down. Click on it and you will find an option called Omni Studio Flex Cards. So click on it. So now you will be able to see the list of the flex cards in your org and also a few other buttons on the top. So guys, now you can clearly see that we are getting a warning symbol over here. So if I click on it, it is clearly telling us that we need to add two URLs which are given here to the remote site settings for the Lightning Web Component or the LWC to work properly. So you need to know one thing, that whenever we create a flex card, the Salesforce Omni Studio engine creates a corresponding Lightning Web Component file for the same in the backend. So let us quickly add these URLs. So I will navigate to setup from here and I will type remote site settings in the quick find box. So click on it. So you can see that we have a button called new remote site over here, by clicking on which we can add the new sites. So let us do it. So let me grab the first URL and hit the save and new button. And let us do the same for the second one. So I will hit now the save button. So you can see that we have successfully added these two URLs in the remote site settings. And if I go ahead here and refresh this screen, This warning symbol should now disappear. So now I will go ahead and hit the new button here. And you can see that as soon as I do it, we have 4 steps here. So in the first step, we have to fill certain basic details over here. So I'm going to do it. So for the name, I'm going to enter a value as green energy GE underscore fetch dynamic images. For the theme, you can either select lightning or Newport as per your style preference. So I am keeping it as lightning. For the author, system admin user is coming here. But since spaces are not allowed, it's throwing an error. So let me correct this. The title of the flex card is auto populating, so I will leave it as it is. This is not a child card because it is not embedded anywhere. So again, I will leave this unchecked. And description is an optional field. I will leave it for now. So let me go and hit the next button. So you can see that in the second step, we have to select data source type. So we can do this afterwards also. So I will skip this step for now. And also, as I will leave this data source type as none, all other next steps, which is the data source itself and the inputs for the same, will also be skipped and directly the card will be created. So I will hit the save button for now. So right now in the back end, the Salesforce Omnistudio engine is creating a requisite Lightning Web component for this card. So guys, now understand this, that this particular interface through which we are going to design our flex card is known as the flex card designer. On the top, you can see that there are certain buttons, and here the title of the flex card is displaying. Also here we are having certain basic information, and then this particular blue color box is what is known as the canvas on which we are going to actually build the flex card. And on the right side we have 4 panels: build, properties, style and setup, through which we are going to pick up the elements and configure them. So you don't need to remember the name of anything as such, but with practice you will automatically come to know things. So guys, now the first thing is that Mr. Green wanted us to display a text which would say welcome to your green energy portal. So now you tell me that what should be the type of that element. Should it be some kind of field of some Salesforce object? No, right? It should also not be some kind of an input element because we don't have to take any input from the user. So it is simply a display element, right? So just click on it and scroll and read the name of these elements. So you would automatically realize that we need a text element, right? So let me drag this and drop it onto the canvas. And as I do this, you will see that automatically an edit me text is coming here, which is self-explanatory. So let me edit this text now. And I will say here, welcome to your green energy portal. So guys, now you can style this a little bit. So I will select this and click on these dots, and I will increase the font size and make it bold and center aligned. You can style it as per your choice. Now, the next thing Mr. Green wanted us to build was dynamic and relevant images which would display on the portal. So if I go on the build panel again and ask you the same question, that what should be the type of the element for an dynamic image, so should it be some kind of an object field or an input element? So obviously no, right? It should again be a display element. And if I expand this and scroll down, it is clearly visible that we have to use an image element here. So I will again drag and drop this to the canvas. So now guys, understand this carefully, that from where these images should be pulled. So since Mr. Green wants relevant and dynamic images, it would not make much sense to store these images into the Salesforce database, because we cannot store thousands of images there, right? It would not make much meaning. So ideally these kind of images should be pulled from server, as and when the user refreshes it, we will make a call out to the server and pull a new image. So now I want to introduce you to a very powerful Omnistudio tool, which is known as an integration procedure. Well, as the name itself suggests, integration procedure integrates various elements together and makes a single server call. So for an example, if you have to make more than one server calls, or server calls along with some other computation like maybe calls to Salesforce database. So if you will use different elements and put them all together into an integration procedure, so this will wrap all those elements together and make a single call from your client device, that is your own device which you are using, to the server. So this will save the round trip time and thus lead to optimized performance. So I will go now to the setup tab, and if I scroll down, I have an option to select the data source type. So here I have to choose integration procedure. So once I do it, we have to give the name as well. So we have to go and create an integration procedure. So I will again go and click this particular drop down, and from the list I have to select Omnistudio integration procedures. So click on it. So again, here you can see the list of integration procedures in your org which are displayed. But since we have to create a new one, we will go ahead and hit this new button over here. So click it. And now you have to give the type, subtype, and the name of your integration procedure. So the combination of type and subtype must be unique throughout your org. So I will give the type as maybe green energy, which is GE, and my subtype will be get image from server. And for the name you can give any name, but I would say if you give type underscore subtype, it will be a part of the best practice. So I will go ahead and give it as GE, which is type underscore subtype get image from server. So this will be my name. After this, hit the blue color save button. So now, to design this integration procedure, on the left side we have various elements classified into two parts, groups and actions. So groups element will be used to create logical grouping of certain elements together. So guys, now we have to use an action element to make a call to server. So again, if you read all these elements one by one, you will eventually realize that HTTP action is the one which can directly call an endpoint. So I will drag and drop this to the structure panel. And so now here you can see we have multiple options to configure, through which we will be able to make a call to the server. So the most important of them is the path and the method. So path will be the endpoint which we have to invoke, and method will be the HTTP method like get, post, put or delete. So now to pull the dynamic images from the server, I found out a free of cost API which is known as the Unsplash API. So I will navigate to it. You can also use any other API if you know, but since I have used this one earlier and I found out it to be pretty much decent, I will go ahead with it. So I will click on it. And if you are using it for the first time, you have to register as a developer. So I will click on this button. And here you have to fill certain basic information. So let me fill mine. So once you have filled in your basic information, hit the join button. Okay, so now I have registered as a developer on Unsplash API. For now, I will go ahead and click on this button, new application. So check these check boxes if you agree to them. I will go ahead and check these and also read these terms and conditions, and if you agree to it, click this black color button, accept terms. So I will go ahead and click on it. So we have to give an application name here. So I will say green energy GE underscore demo project and describe your application. So you can write pretty much anything here. So I will go ahead and click on this button, create application. So you can see here under the request and usage section, since we are using a free version of this API, we have only 50 requests per hour. This is what we were looking for, our access key and our secret key. This is what is going to uniquely identify each user of this API, and we need to pass these values when we make a call out to this API to get the image. So guys, now I will go ahead and open this documentation section in a new tab. And first of all, you have to go to this section, setting up an application. So here, if you scroll down, you will find a list of status codes which you can read. Also scroll down a little bit so you can see how we have to make the request. So now there are two ways you can call this particular URL. One is that you pass your access key in the call out URL itself, and the other one is that you set it as an authorization header. So to confirm this API is working, I will copy this particular URL and I will paste it in a new tab for now, and I will replace this particular value with my actual access key which I initially got. So let me hit enter now and I should see a JSON response. So now this clearly means that our API is successfully working, and if I go ahead here and I refresh this particular screen, so you will be able to see that the count has reduced to 49 out of 50 requests for this hour. So now, as we need relevant dynamic images, we need to go above and scroll to this particular section, get a random photo. So if I scroll here, you can see that if we use this particular endpoint, photos slash random, and if we make a get request, we should receive a single random photo. So this is one thing. Also, if you scroll down a little bit, you will see that we have a query parameter which we can use to get the relevant images related to electricity or energy only. So now I will go ahead and first of all I will copy the base URL from here, and I will paste it in my HTTP action in the path, and we will use the access key within the authorization header. So under the header section, I will add key value pair, and if you go to the documentation, so you can clearly see that we need to specify the key as authorization. So I will paste this here, and the value as client ID and then your access key. So I will write client ID, and then for the access key I will replace it with my actual access key. So now since I have added the access key in the headers, I will remove it from the URL, and I will go back to the documentation, and you have to now scroll to the random photos and append this in the URL. So I will copy this and I am going to paste it here after the base URL. Also, guys, now try to understand that we have to use this particular parameter. So I will write query. So you need to know how we have to make a URL. So you have to write the base URL, and after that, to specify the path, you have to use these forward slash. And once you are done with the path, you have to use the question mark symbol for the first parameter. So for an example, query is equals to, I will say, energy. And after this, if I have to add other parameters, I will have to use an ampersand symbol. So anyways, don't get much confused with this. For now, just follow what I'm doing and eventually you will understand. And the HTTP method, if you clearly see, is get. So we will write here get. And that is pretty much it. We have to now go to the preview panel where we can run the integration procedure in the system administrator mode, or the in the logged in user mode, and we can see what response our integration procedure is returning. So let me execute it. So we would see an error, as we can see here, which is that under the remote site settings we haven't configured the URL. So let me copy the base URL from here and set this in the remote site settings. So I will navigate to setup, and under the quick find box we have to type remote site settings, and we have to click this button new remote site and add the base URL of the Unsplash API. So I will paste the URL here and hit the save button now. So now let's navigate back to our IP and let's hit the execute button again. Under the debug log on the right hand side, you can see what is the output of each and every element you have placed in your integration procedure here. So I will go back to preview, and under the debug, I am going to go to the HTTP action 1 debug first, which will be the input. So you can see that input is passing correctly, the endpoint is correct, and the header also seems to be absolutely correct. But if we see the output of the HTTP action 1, we can clearly see that we are getting the output as well. Now guys, try to understand this very clearly, that the response that is returned from the API is in the form of a JSON. JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation and is used heavily by the APIs to transfer data today. So this JSON is nothing but key value pairs. So simply you can see here we have a key and then we have a value. So now we need to understand that under which node exactly we are getting the value of the dynamic image. So we can clearly see there are so many nodes. So we have to go to the documentation again, and under this particular section, setting up an application, you have to scroll down. So under this particular section, you can clearly see that we have to consider this particular node, which is called URLs, because this is where we will get the actual URL of the dynamic image. So we have to reach to this particular node. Now let me go back to our IP preview. And if you see the output of this HTTP action 1, there are many nodes, so it's hard to find things here. So what I will do is that I will copy this entire content from here and paste it on an online free JSON editing tool. So guys, I will navigate to jasoneditoronline.org, and on the left hand side, simply you have to paste our JSON which you copied from there, and we have to click this particular right arrow. So it will format this particular JSON now. So you can clearly see that URLs node is here, under which we are having these things. But you need to understand the first thing is that this URLs node is not inside any other node. In the JSON object, it is the first key, right? It is not inside any of these keys. So first thing is this. Second thing is that what is this full, regular, raw, etc. So if you go to the documentation again, you can give a read to this particular section. So you will clearly see that this is the size of the picture. So here I will use the small one for now. So let us do it. So I will go back to my integration procedure. In the preview, you can see clearly that HTTP action 1 is returning such a long JSON, right? And we just need one URL. So ideally, as a part of best practice, we should always trim the JSON so that smaller data flows between elements, and this will improve the performance, right? So I will go to the property section now, and we have an option here which says that return only additional output. So I will check this and I will add a key value pair. So now you need to actually tell to the integration procedure by specifying key and value pairs that what is the exact value in the JSON you want here. So if you see the JSON object completely, you can see that the first thing we want is the URLs node. So I will write here first the HTTP action 1, that is the name of the element, because this particular name of element means this particular JSON object, right, which we have copied here. So it is representing to this complete JSON. Then within this JSON, we need the URLs. So I'm going to specify here colon, and then I'm going to write URLs. Then under the URLs, once I specify URLs, I have reached to this, but I'm pointing to this particular inner JSON, right? So here I want the value of the small node. So I will write again colon small. And once I specify small, I am referring to this particular value, this which is the actual URL of the dynamic image. So this is what we wanted. Also, you need to enclose this particular complete thing inside percentage symbol so that the integration procedure can understand that it is a dynamic value and not a static value. So this is one thing. And for the key, I will name it as, let's say, output URL. So I think, guys, it is pretty much easy. You need to understand that the HTTP action was returning a very long JSON string which we wanted to trim. So we checked this particular checkbox and we specified a key value pair. Key is the name with which now our URL will be referred to, and value is the exact value of the URL which we want to display. So this is how we built it. I think it should be pretty much fine till here. So now one more thing, we need to use a response action, because response action is the element, as the name suggests itself. It returns the response back to whatever called the integration procedure. So here our integration procedure will be called from the flex card, right? So to return the response back to the flex card, we need to add a response action here. So I will place a response action on the panel, and here you can see we have an option called send JSON path and send JSON node. So if you hover over it, send JSON path means the JSON path which you want to send to this particular element. So we want to send nothing but this HTTP action 1. So I will copy this and paste it in the send JSON path. So now if I go ahead and preview this particular IP, we should be able to see output URL with this particular value. So understand it, how it happened. If you go to this debug log and navigate to the HTTP action 1 debug, which is nothing but the input to the HTTP action 1, we can see that correct input is passing. Then the output of the HTTP action 1 is now not a big JSON, but rather a key value pair which we specified. And then this particular thing is passed as an input to response action 1 under the debug section, which we can see, and the output of the response action 1 remains the same. So as and when you will practice, things will eventually become clear. So now we have to go back to the properties panel and we have to activate this particular integration procedure. So I will hit the activate button now. So our integration procedure is now active. Now let me go back to the flex card. So we need to refresh it, I think. Now go back to the setup and select the source as integration procedure and give the name as the one which we gave, ge underscore get image from server. And whenever you set the data source of a flex card for the first time, you have to click on this particular blue button, save and fetch. So once we will click this, navigate to this JSON section and see we are getting the IP response here. So click the OK button and now click on this image section, and once you do that, under the image source you will get an option of this output URL. So click on it and we can see the image is loading here. So now guys, one more thing is that we have a preview button here. So we can click on the preview button and see our flex card in preview mode. If I refresh it using this refresh button, I should be able to see another new image this time. So yeah, it looks awesome.